Hello, everybody. How are you today? We are back for another Bible reading story. It is a rainy afternoon. It's a great day for another story. For those of you joining for the first time, here's what we do. We go through different stories of the Bible, different chapters and books of the Bible, so that you have an opportunity to know what it says. Too many times, people only read a little bit or piece of a story, and you don't get to know the whole story. And so many things from the Bible are actually inserted into our culture, little sayings that we have, little things that we do, and we don't always understand where they come from. So what we do is we go through all of these things in the Bible so that you have an opportunity to know them for yourself. That way, if they come up in conversation or you hear something, you know what people are talking about, and maybe you can even participate in those conversations. Well, lately we've been picking out different stories from the New Testament, stories about Jesus, stories that Jesus told. And today we are going to start looking at some things in Luke chapter 8. Now, we are not going to read the entire the entire chapter of Luke 8 because it is rather long. But we are going to stick with some specific stories that come out of Luke. And I don't like for us to read just bits and pieces of something because then you don't really understand what was going on and what was happening. But we are going to start with Luke chapter 8, verse 16, and read until we get to the end of chapter 8. So remember, Jesus is going around teaching different things. The crowds have really started to gather and follow him. They are watching him. They're learning from him. They are wondering about him. There are people who have come to understand that Jesus is probably the Messiah. And there are people who are upset that Jesus has come and they would like to end his ministry. I told you we were going to start in chapter 16, and I apologize. We are actually going to be starting in chapter 26. I don't know why I said 16, but we're going to be starting in chapter 8, verse 26. I apologize. I'm tongue-tied today. So Jesus has been teaching. They're traveling around. He has just been out in the water on a boat with his disciples, and a storm had come up, and he tells the storm to settle down. He makes the waves stop, and they land now to the region of Gerasenes, and we're going to go ahead and start reading now. Then they sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. When he got out on land, a demon-possessed man from the town met him. For a long time he had worn no clothes and did not stay in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell down before him, and said in a loud voice, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was guarded, bound by chains and shackles, he would snap the restraints and be driven by the demon into deserted places. "What is your name?" Jesus asked him. "Legion," he said, because many demons had entered him, and they begged him not to banish him to the abyss. A large herd of pigs was there, feeding on a hillside. The demons begged him to permit them to enter the pigs, and he gave them permission. The demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. When the men who tended them saw what had happened, they ran off and reported it in the town and in all the countryside. Then people went out to see what had happened. They came to Jesus and found the man the demons had departed from, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Meanwhile, the eyewitnesses reported to them how the demon-possessed man was delivered Then all the people of the Gerasene region asked him to leave them because they were gripped by great fear. So getting into the boat, he returned. The man from whom the demons had departed begged him earnestly to be with him, but he sent him away and said, "Go back to your home and tell all that God has done for you." And off he went, proclaiming throughout the town how much Jesus had done for him. When Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Just then a man named Jairus came. He was a leader of the synagogue. He fell down at Jesus' feet and pleaded with him to come to his house because he had an only daughter, about 12 years old, and she was dying. While he was going, the crowds were nearly crushing him. A woman suffering from bleeding for 12 years, who had spent all she had on doctors and yet could not be healed by any of them, approached from behind and touched the end of his robe, and instantly her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds are hemming you in and pressing against you." "Someone did touch me," said Jesus. "I know the power has gone out from me." When the woman saw that she was discovered, she came trembling and fell down before him in the presence of all the people. She declared the reason she had touched him and how she was instantly healed. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has saved you. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue leader's house and said, "Your daughter is dead. Don't bother the teacher anymore." When Jesus heard it, he answered him, "Don't be afraid, only believe, and she will be saved." After he came to the house, he let no one enter with him except Peter, John, James, and the child's father and mother. Everyone was crying and mourning for her, but he said, "Stop crying, because she is not dead, but asleep." They laughed at him because they knew she was dead. So he took her by the hand and called out, "Child, get up." Her spirit returned, and she got up at once. Then he gave orders that she be given something to eat. Her parents were astounded, but he instructed them to tell no one what had happened. That's the end of Luke chapter 8. All right. There are 3 ways that we look at these things when we read them in the Bible. 1, what does it say? We have to actually read the words on the page. You have to have some type of reading comprehension. You have to know what it says. If you don't read them for yourselves, you don't know. You only know what somebody has told you. Next, what was it saying to the people of the times? What was the culture, the history? We have to take everything into context and understand fully what was going on. And last, what, if anything, is it saying to us today? Well, let's start with where we started from. Jesus and his disciples get in a boat and they cross over this region that is opposite where he had been teaching. And when he gets there, he encounters this demon-possessed man. Now, this man was so bad off that he didn't wear clothes. We get a kind of a picture of this guy. This is kind of this wild dude. Didn't wear clothes. He lived in the tombs. They tried to restrain him, but when they did, he would just break out of his restraints. He was, had all of this strength. Immediately, the guy encounters Jesus. That's the first thing that happens. Jesus gets there. This guy sees him, and the demons that live within him, they recognize Jesus for who he is. He is the Son of God. He is the Messiah. He is God. And they say to him right off the bat, "What do you have to do with us, Jesus? What do you want from us?" And Jesus says to them the most interesting thing. He says to them, he's speaking now to the demons. He says, "What is your name?" And he talks, the man's talking to him, and then it says, "Legion," because many demons had entered him. So, have you ever heard the term, they sent a legion of troops out there? That means many. Or there's I guess that's the best example I have, a legion of troops. are fighting. Legion means many. So when he asked this man, "What is your name?" the man answered legion, because there were many demons that had entered him. It wasn't just one, but there were several. He was being inhabited by demons. The demons knew that Jesus was going to deliver this man from them, and they begged him, "Do not banish them to the abyss," because they knew that Jesus had the power to send them off to the abyss where they would never be able to function again. And Jesus decides at that point, okay, there's a herd of pigs off in the distance. He sees them, they're feeding. He says, "I'll just send them to the pigs." So he tells them, "Go get the pigs." So they go to the pigs, and the demons had begged to be sent to the pigs rather than the abyss. And so he sends them to the pigs, and those that were tending the pigs saw that these pigs kind of went crazy, and they threw themselves off of this cliff, and they go back into town and they report everything that they have just witnessed. So that some of the townspeople come, and they now see this once demon-possessed man is in his right mind. He's dressed, he's sitting by Jesus, and they're just having a little chat. And these people are amazed and also terrified, and they beg Jesus to leave. Something else you need to remember is those pigs were some of those people's wealth. Imagine if you owned a farm and your means of supporting yourself was by raising cattle, and all of a sudden something happens to all of your cows and they commit suicide. There goes your income, right? So they were not only scared, they were not only in awe and amazed at Jesus, but they were probably a little bit upset too, because they had just lost their income. So they're begging Jesus to please go back to where you came from. Please don't stay here. Now, the man who had the demons taken out of him and sent into the pigs, he begs Jesus to let him go with him. And Jesus says, "Go back to your home and tell all that God has done for you." Well, why do you think he would have told him to do that? More than likely, because the man went back and he started proclaiming throughout the entire town, it says, how much Jesus had done for him. More than likely, Jesus used this man to spread the good news of who Jesus was, so that these people would begin to know who Jesus was, that he is the God who changes lives, that he doesn't leave us the way he finds us. Well, Jesus goes back. He goes back to where he had left in the Galilee region, and there is a crowd waiting for him. It says they were waiting. They knew he was going to return, and they were waiting for him. They couldn't wait for him to come back because they had heard about his ability to heal people and all the miracles that he could perform. And as soon as he gets there, this crowd just rushes up on him. They all want something from him. There was a leader of the synagogue, and he fell down at Jesus' feet. You have to understand, a lot of the leaders of the synagogues and the leaders in the temple in Jerusalem, they questioned Jesus. They weren't quite sure. They didn't like the fact that Jesus might be coming in and taking away some of their position and power, so they thought. And so not all of them liked Jesus. But no doubt for this particular leader, he started to realize that Jesus was his last hope if his daughter was going to live. His daughter was dying. And so he falls down and begs Jesus, "Please come to my house and heal my daughter." Jesus is more than obliging. He says, "Okay, we'll do that." And they start heading that direction. But meanwhile, the crowds are just pressing against him. They're pushing and pushing and pushing against him. Hundreds of people. And all of a sudden, he feels this power, because Jesus has this power. This power goes out of his body. You ever get home from a long day of work and you just feel drained? Well, this was probably one step above that. Jesus felt the power that was within him had been released, had been taken out of him. And he says to his disciples, he looks around, meanwhile, people are pressing up against him. He says, "Who touched me?" Seems kind of like a ridiculous question when you understand that there were hundreds of people pushing up against him and his disciples. There were people trying to touch him and press him. And Peter's like, well, it wasn't us. I mean, what are you talking about? Look at these people are pressing against us. How do we know who touched you? There was a woman who had this bleeding problem, and she had some female issues where she, for most women that happens once a month, but for her this had gone on for years. And excuse me, she had spent everything that she had, all the money that she had in the world, on doctors trying to get them to heal her, and nothing worked. She had not been healed. What is significant about that is, in that culture, remember I told you we have to look at the things that happen in the culture. In that particular culture, at that particular time, and it still happens in some cultures today, maybe not to the same extreme, when a woman was on her cycle, she was considered unclean, and she was to separate herself from society until her cycle ended. If she had to go out and be around people, she had to let them know that she was unclean. She was deemed unclean so that people could stay away from her. This woman probably lived an excruciatingly lonely life because she could get in trouble. She could be in serious trouble if it was found out that she was on her cycle but didn't let other people know, and they got close to her, and other people might have touched her, interacted with her. She could have been in a lot of trouble. So for her to step out and touch, she thought to herself, if I could just touch the bottom of his robe, if I could just touch the hem of his robe, maybe that would heal me. That would be enough to heal me. So she did that knowing that she could have lost her life over it. But she did it anyway because she believed that her last chance in life, the last opportunity that she had to be healed, her money was gone, the doctors couldn't do anything for her, was this Jesus. And Jesus felt the power go out of him as soon as she just touched his robe. She didn't even have to touch his skin or hold his hand or make eye contact with him. She just touched the bottom of his robe. And Jesus recognizes that this power has gone out. He says, who touched me? Now, somehow this woman realizes, I've been found out. He knows. She admits to it. She falls down. She says she's trembling. She probably thought he was going to have her killed for touching him because she was unclean. But Jesus says the most beautiful things to her. She admits to it, and she tells him why. She says, I'm unclean. I touched you. I want to be healed. And Jesus says, daughter. What a beautiful thing to call her daughter. He didn't just say, well, woman. He called her daughter. A very personal thing that he said to her. He said, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Why would he tell her to go in peace? Because he could have had her killed. But what he's telling her here is, it's okay. You're okay. And immediately she was healed. What a beautiful thing that he did. Well, while that's happening, he's still speaking to the crowds. He's still speaking more likely to this woman. And remember that the leader of the synagogue, he was headed to the guy's house to go heal his daughter? Well, somebody from his house comes and says, don't bother. Your daughter's dead. What a way to get that news. Don't bother that guy. Your daughter's dead. And Jesus hears this and he says, turns to the guy. He says, do not be afraid. He says, she will be saved. So they continue walking. They get to her house, and he only takes a few of his disciples in with him, Peter, John, and James, it says, and the child's parents. Meanwhile, everybody outside, he says, she's not dead. Don't worry, guys. She's not dead. She's just asleep. And they said, oh, yeah, right. We've seen dead people. We know what dead people looks like. And they start mocking him. I believe for that reason, he didn't bring everybody into the house with him. He just didn't do that because he didn't want their unbelief to taint the situation. So he brought his closest disciples. He brought the leader of the synagogue, whose daughter it was, and his wife, her parents. And he goes in and he says, child, get up. That's it. He speaks to the dead and they come back to life. He did it with Lazarus and he does it with this child. He says, get up. So she gets up. Now, I don't know what was going through her head. We're not told. She doesn't say, hey, wasn't I just dead? We don't know anything about that. But he turns to the other people and he says, get her something to eat. That's the orders that he gives. Her parents, it says, were astonished. Now, I would think so. You think your child is dead. They've been sick. They're dying. They're dead. And all of a sudden, they're so alive that you're being told to go get her something to eat. So they go and get her something to eat. And he says to them, don't tell anybody what you've just seen. Tell no one what has just happened. He was doing that because he knew that eventually they were going to start to seek his life. And I think that, I don't know if this is true or not, but I kind of get the feeling that he told them to tell no one what had happened because he was trying to protect them. He didn't want them to be criticized or harmed in some way, probably for the sake of this little girl, because they were going to be after Jesus eventually too. So anyway, that's where chapter 8 leaves off. So what is it saying to us today? We learn so much about the character of God through all of these readings. We learn so much about Jesus and what he did, who he healed, how he healed, why he healed. We start with the man who had many demons in him. Instead of going back to the old lifestyle, once Jesus healed him, once he eliminated these demons from his life, the man said, I want to follow you. He got dressed. He was in his right mind and he stayed there and he said, I want to follow you. And Jesus used him as a testimony and a witness to the people in his town. Instead, he said, no, I need you to go and tell these people what you have just seen so that they believe in me. That's one of the responsibilities that we as believers in Christ have, is when Jesus changes us, when he comes into our lives and he gives us a new start and a new beginning, it is our responsibility to let other people know what he has done for us in our lives. This woman that was healed knew that Jesus could heal her because she had great faith. Jesus never condemns us for coming to him with our problems, with our issues, even when the world says that you're a terrible person, you are awful, you are unclean. Jesus doesn't condemn us. If we come in faith to him and we say, Jesus, I need you to cleanse my life, I need you to heal my life, I need you to fix me, he will. And he tells us to go in peace. We are at peace with him. He's not at war with us. He never wanted to condemn this woman. It probably cured her loneliness problem, certainly cured her health issues, cured her loneliness problem. He wants a good life for us. And when we come and we lean on Jesus and we touch him, he wants to heal us. It's his pleasure to do that. And the same is true. He demonstrated his power with the girl that was dead, and he showed them, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You might see with your fleshly eyes that she's dead, but I see with the spiritual eyes that I can raise her up. And that's what he did. He brings us back to life. Jesus can bring us back to life. Does that mean that everybody who dies gets brought back to life? No. But sometimes we walk around as spiritually dead people. And once Jesus has touched our lives, we are spiritually alive, and we can live spiritually alive forever with him if we accept him. So that was part of Luke chapter 8, several different stories, lots of events going on in there. I don't know what we're going to do next, but if you do not know Jesus, I invite you right now to take this opportunity to go to him, ask him to touch your life, ask him to forgive you of your sins. Sin is something that separates us from God. We are all born into sin, and until we confess that to Jesus and ask him to take that from us, we cannot be in relationship with God. So I invite you to do that. And he has good things in store for you, wonderful things planned for your life. That's all we have today. I hope you learned something. I look forward to us being together next time. Have a great day.